Good to have a little break in the monotony here during the pandemic, but I would echo a lot of the things that Andrew's talking about. You don't leave the house as much, and I like to eat, so I do what passes for cooking. I've always said I have a bachelor's fridge. If you can't drink it or spread it, I don't have it. But pour it out of a tube. But I've gotten a little better at that, and that's good. And then the one unusual thing that I have done scratches a couple of itches. Not that this would give you any indication, but I thought we were all going to have this, deal. We got to have better Zoom backgrounds, right? And so I was going to put some effort in on that. Now I've done a million Zooms, and I haven't done anything more than this poster. But the next pandemic, I'm gonna be there, and I love, we all got into sports because we love doing it. We love the venues. We love traveling around. So I've kind of killed two birds with one stone. And while some people have gotten into jigsaw puzzles, my goofy little time waster has been these stadiums out of Legos.
Oh,
So
that's incredible.
That's cool.
It's a deal called Brixels, not to plug them, but that's the deal. You can get any stadium. The Kyle Field thing looks awesome. Anyway, I've done that one, and then I prefer to do baseball stadiums because they're not symmetrical and nooks and crannies. So I've done about 5 big league ballparks, and probably more to come if this thing drags on.
How many total for you?
I just finished Pittsburgh, so I've done San Francisco, Boston, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh in baseball. But I'll do once they arrive, I'll do Yankee Stadium and Wrigley Field, and my brother lives in DC, so I'll do his ballpark, and I try to customize them up. So that's a little geeky thing. For a while I did it during the White House briefings. So while they're going on for an hour and a half of Q&A, I'm sitting there figuring out how these things go together. But in the end, I'll make a big backdrop here, have a better looking desk. And I remember starting off in Little League, we lost every game, I want to say, for the first 2 years. I think we eventually won. Billy Baldwin, who was like the 6'4", 10-year-old in our league, like we had a combined no-hitter to break out of the it was probably with 18 walks too, but to finally break that losing streak. That's not what I was going to say to your original question, Adam, but my playing careers were never a standout in any way, shape, or form. But for me, just being a kid is just the magnitude of going to a major league sporting event, or just being a young person coming to the Dome for a football or basketball game, and just being blown away by the size of everything and the sound and the color, and going to Yankee Stadium for the first time, walking out the tunnel and this green grass. To me, that's more gripping than anything. I couldn't tell you about wins and losses or games that I played. It wasn't good enough for any of that to be notable, but that's where I think the seeds are planted for what this now becomes our career, is just falling in love with those settings. Literally, going back to your first question, the first time you ever put a headset on was in high school. I was probably a sophomore or junior in high school, and like a lot of small towns in America, there was that station that goes around and does all the high school games for a given region or conference. And WMCR in Oneida, New York, which is 30 minutes from where I am right now, just east of Syracuse, they did all the games in our high school league, and got to know those guys a little bit, basically just by showing up and wanting to be a fly on the wall, but then trying to make myself useful. They would come do a high school football game at our school, and I'd sit there with my clipboard, and I would keep the stats. And so-and-so, rushed for, and I'd read them back on the air at halftime. Well, Brian Lucy threw, 2 passes complete out of 8 for 14 yards, and Rusty Dean ran for 24 yards on 6 carries. And, as you guys know, now we've all done it a million times, but the first time you even hear yourself coming back on the air takes some getting used to, and you're nervous as heck. And there probably were, 4 people listening, if that, and 3 of them were in the booth with us, So that just kind of plants the seed. Those guys called games that we would have played in. So, I could basically play in a high school baseball game and go swing by the broadcast if I wanted to at the same time, or maybe pick up a different game that I wasn't playing on the weekends. And once I got into college, I would, do some more stuff with them and kind of learn by trial and error. For me, with, the school for what I wanted to do for a living, being in my backyard, there was really no choice for me. And the Syracuse experience is something that I owe my career to, the WAER and getting an opportunity to call Syracuse football, basketball, lacrosse while we were here. And then the same as the other guys, baseball was my thing. We did New York Penn League baseball after our junior year of college. And then my first job was in the South Atlantic League. I actually left school early in my senior year of college. By that time, I had jiggered my course schedule to be such a way that I had one class in my spring semester senior year. It met one day a week, and it was taught by the dean. So when I called him up and said in, I think, February, I said, hey, I've got a job. I need to leave in March. It was basically like, hey, I'm not going to hold you back. We'll figure out the rest. And went to the Phillies Class A affiliate in the South Atlantic League, and I was there for 2 years and did UNC Greensboro basketball in the winters. And then after a couple of years of that, I went to the Cubs AA team, which by then Andrew had moved from Orlando and bounced around. It was in Jackson, Tennessee at that time. I was there for 4 years, and in the off seasons did small time college football, basketball on radio, on TV, wherever they would have me, and always kind of kept my ear to the ground about what was possible to come back here. I almost came back here a year prior to when I actually did. But as it worked out, I came back in the fall of '02, did a couple years as the pre and post game host and analyst type on football, basketball, did lacrosse play-by-play. And then after a couple of years of that, my partner, then Mark Johnson, moved on to Colorado, and he's still there as the play-by-play voice, and I've been here ever since as the play-by-play voice. So a lot of years, the time flies, but that's the synopsis of it. The first game one is a question we get asked a lot. Easy answer for me. The stock answer is the 6 overtime game between Syracuse and Connecticut in the Big East tournament in 2009, which was just epic. It had all the makings of, two good teams, Madison Square Garden, win or go home and get ready for the NCAA tournament, that type of thing. But the drama of being the 9 o'clock tip-off at the world's most famous arena is a starting point, and then the great rivalry, the coaches, and then the game just kept going and going. And those of us have called as many games as the 3 of us or 4 of us have. You're going to have a few that you can rattle off, but that one will be hard to top, just for the camaraderie that it built and the building that night, the energy, etc. Best athlete, could go probably a lot of different ways. I've seen a lot of guys that went on to play big league baseball or whatever, but again, hard to beat Carmelo Anthony for a 1-year season in college basketball, lifting his team to the national championship. And he was such an interesting guy. He was 18 years old, and he was very not impressed by himself, I would say, over the course that nothing was a big deal to him. So interviewing him was always interesting. We called it the Carmelo Anthony rodeo. If you could stay on for 60 seconds, you won. Like, he just didn't really have that much to say because he didn't think it was that big a deal that he scored 30 points and had 15 rebounds in the national semifinal in front of 75,000 people. And so really unique, and he's been back and kept in touch with the university, so that's been cool to see. It was just something I thought was worth the time, and we're going back, I don't know what date it was exactly when we did it, but it was like, gee, we got nothing better to do. Everybody's sitting at home. They've been starting to rerun a lot of these games to create some content on the networks. And I had heard somewhere along the line that game was in the schedule for CBS Sportsnet, maybe a week in advance. And so I kind of ran it up the flagpole at work. I said, hey, how about we maybe do a show? We get some of the guys back together. And it just kind of snowballed. My first call was to Jerry McNamara, and hey, man, need you to do this. Oh, I don't really like doing that. I'm going to have a lot of distractions around the house. I said, hey, we can't really do this if you don't participate. Okay, well, I'll do it if you need me. So then kind of worked on a bunch of my media friends and, fan alumni types, fingers crossed we could certainly lean on Coach Boeheim to get some contribution from his house. And then Julie Boeheim really is the MVP. Our basketball sports information director, Pete Moore, did a nice job getting a couple of the guys that I didn't have contact for. But number one, we just said, okay, we're going to put a camera in the Boeheim household and whatever we get's a bonus. If coach really wants to participate, fantastic. If he doesn't, we'll maybe lean on him for a minute here or there, and we'll just hope for the best. He was on basically the whole time. And then Julie kind of took my passive aggressive hints and ran to Carmelo, and she got Melo in. So, and that was a surprise even to me. I said to a couple of people I was working with producing it, I said, look, if somehow we get Melo on this, let's have it be a surprise to everybody. So we didn't promote with his name. We had all these other names. But then I'm watching, you guys know how Zoom works, obviously, and I'm watching the participant thing come up, and here it is, Melo 7 or whatever shows up in the participants. So then it was on. And so one of the guys in the room with me, Scott Hecht, our director of the athletics productions, he's watching the viewer count. Oh, it's 500, it's 800, it's 1,200, it's 3,500, it's 4,000. Because once he was in there, he added a lot and did it just from sitting on his couch wherever he was. So very appreciative of Melo for doing that, and obviously for Julie, she's a saint. For me, it was the same type of thing. It wasn't like an overnight kind of deal. I was already here. They had Syracuse called me a year before I ever actually came, and we talked about a position where maybe I would do basketball color and lacrosse play-by-play. And they ended up kind of pulling the plug on that because they had an opportunity for a former player to be analyst, which had really never happened here before. And so that went for another year. And then Dave Pasch was one of our predecessors here, and he left to, he'd started to get more ESPN work, but had been named the radio voice of the Arizona Cardinals. So that's what took him out of here. And at that time, they had 2 jobs open, really, or, we were all gunning for the play-by-play job. And I was, I'll be frank, was disappointed to have not gotten the play-by-play job kind of out of the box. Would have been a little young. I think that was kind of what they cited at the time. It was kind of a reason for going Mark, who does a really good job and has an incredible sound in his own right. And so we worked the 2 years together. And I know Mark was interested in getting back to the West, and he kind of had his irons in the fire there. And I remember where I was when I was called. Mark, I must have given me an email or some sort of heads up at the time. And then Chris Ferris, who's Tom's counterpart from the ISP, IMG background, Chris called, and I was, at that year, this is 2004, I was doing the Binghamton Mets games. So David Wright was our top player at the time, and I was on the road in Erie, Pennsylvania. And so it was getting close to game time, and I got it must have been like an email from Mark, hey, Chris is going to call you, and that kind of thing. And you don't know at the time what it's about, but Chris calls and spills the beans quickly, and that was obviously very exciting and an incredible rush of adrenaline, because you feel like, hey, I've achieved this career goal and get this promotion, and man, this is exciting. And then your wheels start spinning on all the things that now come with that and what you're responsible for and what you want to do. So I'm sure I my brain was elsewhere while calling the baseball game that night, but I probably had a little more adrenaline and energy in my voice. I was, to me, like the way I communicated that to my family, I remember pretty much immediately I sent flowers to my mom, that was my sort of way of passing the news along. And you got to thank the people that have supported you. When I was eating Chef Boyardee for the first 6 years of my professional career and living with, 3 other guys on air mattresses in an apartment, that's the kind of stuff that you're kind of graduating out of at that time. And you got to thank the people that helped you along the way. So that was a real thrill to do.